Good afternoon or good morning based on where you're joining from today. My name is Jonathan Gandalf. I'm the founder and CEO of The Juice, and I'm excited to be joined by experts from the Guru and Spiff team. Today's event, Sales Enablement's Guide to a Successful 2023 SKO, will hopefully set you and your team up for success when it comes to planning your SKO. I'm no expert, but fortunately, I'm joined by experts, and I'm just going to be hosting the conversation today. And I'd like to thank our partners in this event, both the Guru team, the Spiff team, and our friends at Goldcast as well for the platform that we are hosting on today. Before we jump into the content of the event, just a few housekeeping items. The event is being recorded and will be shared post-event. If you're looking for additional resources on all things sales enablement, all things SKO, or all things sales and marketing, you can obviously visit The Juice at app.thejuicehq.com. We will do a Q&A at the end of the event. Feel free to insert that into the Q&A entry on the right or in the chat on the right. We'll manage through those at the end of the event and pepper our speakers with those events then. If you have any questions, any technical errors, feel free to insert those there as well, and our team will do the best to troubleshoot those. Thank you, Kat, from our team. She's our host extraordinaire, working everything behind the scenes. Before I invite Melody up on stage, just a little bit about today's event. Myself, I'm a career marketer before helping launch The Juice. As a marketer, I've been involved in a lot of SKOs, both good and bad. I've got some fun stories that we might get into later on in the event, but I'm really excited to be joined by the experts today, Julia from the Guru team and Melody from the Spiff team. Fittingly, it is Super Bowl season for those football fans, and I know that SKO is Sales Enablement Super Bowl for the year. So we'll talk a lot today about how to set that event up for success, and I'm excited to be joined by them. So how today's conversation is going to work, I'm going to have a one-on-one conversation with Melody and a one-on-one conversation with Julia, and then we'll invite them both on stage at the end to do Q&A, and that's when we'll get to any questions you may have along the way. So without further ado, I'd love to bring Melody on the stage and we can start talking about all things SKO and setting her team up for success. Howdy, Melody. Welcome to the virtual stage.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you joining us. Maybe before we jump into the weeds of all things SKO, yes. You just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and Spiff?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Virtually, hello from Los Angeles. It's so great to be here. So my name is Melody. I'm the VP of Sales Enablement and Operations at Spiff. We are a tool to support your compensation process, supporting both your SDR, your AE, your CSM tool for compensation management and compliance. And so we're very excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking about Sales Kickoff.
Awesome. Is it 72 and sunny in Los Angeles today?
Around there, yeah.
Man, must be nice.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, tell us maybe a little bit, give us the brass tacks on what Spiff's SKO looks like this year.
Yes, for sure. So our sales kickoff is centered not only around our sales team, but really centered around our go-to-market team and working together as a go-to-market organization. So our sales kickoff, formatting wise, is 2 full days of an event. But then also we've got some kind of details around the event to ensure that we're all marching together as an organization. So we have got a pre-sync as a leadership team the day before. This is where we're going to walk through the entire event, review the content, anticipate questions, pinpoint certain areas on where to engage the audience, or maybe reference some deals or customers. So it's a full 3 days, 2 days for the team and then 3 days for the leadership team. And then we've got some various details around that. So you've got a welcome reception, the night before. It's really important to us. We're a remote team. Most of us haven't met each other. So we want to get to know each other before we jump into the full event. And then at the actual event itself, it's filled with all the things that you would expect. So it is team breakouts and rotations and keynote speakers and games and all of the things that you would want from a 2-day event.
That's awesome. I'm curious, and I think Kat has a poll question she's going to open up for everybody. Is this the first year you said a lot of the team hasn't met in person? Is this kind of the first year back in person for the SKO?
Yeah, so there was a SKO prior to my arrival at SPIF. I joined the organization back in April, but we have grown significantly and hired a lot of both sellers, but also members of the go-to-market team. So this will be the first for many of us meeting each other outside of a remote environment.
Very cool. Very cool. We've been fortunate. We had a call previous, getting prepped for the event, and you just used a word that really, or two words, I suppose, that really stuck with me. You talked about injecting adrenaline into the team, into the business through this event. And so I'm curious to learn about how you think about doing that, injecting adrenaline, but also making sure it's not just a short-term adrenaline rush for everybody involved, but you can actually ensure that the SKO's impact last throughout the remainder of the entire year.
Yeah. So when I think about the objective of sales kickoff, and everyone's got different goals, when I think about the objective of sales kickoff, I think it kind of falls into a couple of buckets. One, it's team building, it's motivation, it's getting everybody rallied around your mission and vision and goals. But then also, don't forget the thing that excites people, that gives them a lot of energy, is having clear direction on how you're going to be successful. And so it's both a team building and motivational motion, but then it's also a way for you to communicate and provide tools for your team that will help them be successful. So naturally, that's very exciting as well. And I think from an objectives perspective, it's really important that you comb through the content time and time again to make sure you're always thinking and looking at it from a very objective eye to ensure that what you're teaching and what you're rolling out is going to, roll into what will get your team excited. So a little short, a little long, but also, details are really important.
That's awesome. And then as far as the remainder of the year goes, are there tangible takeaways for your team, like actual deliverables, resources, or do you schedule kind of pulse checks throughout the year? What does carrying the theme of the event throughout the year look like at SPIF?
Yeah. So depending on where the audience, you're at in your kind of enablement journey, what I would encourage you to have in place is some sort of cadence for learning. So ours is, we've got a learning huddle the first week of the month, a broader enablement session the second week of the month, and then the third week of the month is product. And so ideally, your sales kickoff rolls right into the cadence that is either already happening, or you're welcome to take that format and kick that off this year. So after sales kickoff for us, we've got an enablement session where we'll start to pull through some of the themes for the year. And I think the one thing about what we're rolling out at sales kickoff is none of it is really a surprise, right? We're really focused on profiling and finding, the right customer and ensuring that we are aligning to the right type of business value and the right type of pain. And so those are all common themes throughout our enablement program now. And so obviously we just continue on, and sales kickoff is a way for us to kind of gather around it.
I love that cadence for learning. I talk about our team all the time. That's not something we're going to steal from you. That's something we're going to be inspired by and maybe duplicate in our business. That's really good. Yeah. I love that. All right. You mentioned it when you were talking about the SKO format for SPIF. And I'm super curious that pre-leadership or the pre-SKO leadership meeting. Yeah. That seems both really smart and potentially dangerous, I think. How do you balance? You said you anticipate questions during that time. How much of that pre-SKO leadership is it informing versus allowing for input from the leadership team, or has that already happened at that stage in the process?
Yeah. So here's what I would recommend. Leading up to your sales kickoff with your speakers, making sure that you've got weekly check-ins and you've got visibility into what they're building. So that way, any sort of input or discussion point that comes from building those presentations is vetted out before you get to the actual event itself. So that way, Jonathan, to your point around having everybody come together, everyone is already aware of what the content is. You've already had those alignment conversations. And, you're just running through the run of show to ensure that your go-to-market leadership team or your sales leadership team is aware of what's going on. They're also able to ask questions if their team asks, hey, where's that room? Or what's this next session about or whatnot? So ideally, you've vetted some of these things before. That being said, if you got to pivot last minute on something, be prepared for that too. So
that happens.
Yeah, it happens because, we're moving very quickly and there are different topics that come into play. Maybe a little bit of recency bias based on some, maybe headwinds that you didn't expect. So you want to just be ready for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Spiff is commission software. So maybe specific to you, or maybe a little bit of inception here. How does the very sensitive topic of commission and compensation get addressed or not get addressed during SKO, or do you have recommendations on how it should or should not be addressed?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the way that I think about that is in two parts. One, sales kickoff is always, or go-to-market kickoff, company kickoff is a really great way and an avenue to have a really big give for your team. So maybe you want to have an incentive that everyone's been asking for. The other part of that, when you address compensation, is you might want to have a give around new technology, new process, but then also the other thing is that when you're rolling out all these new processes and initiatives, you want to make sure that you're pulling through that change into their compensation plan. So, if you're a growth organization and you really want to incent new logos, you want to make sure that that change gets pulled through to the comp plan. If you're really focused on retention and you've got a lot of sessions around that, you want to make sure that change gets pulled through. So you're starting to incent the behaviors that are aligned to the training that you're delivering. So I think both process-wise, maybe a short-term or a longer-term spiff, but remember, sales kickoff is that one event that induces change for the year. And so you still want to apply any sort of change management best practices, like changing your compensation plan if you need to pull through that change.
That's awesome. That's great advice. It has to be aligned with the content you're presenting, or else it'll probably feel like misalignment right off the bat. So that's a great call out.
Totally.
All right. Maybe one last question before I let you off the hot seat here. Just very, you've been involved in several SKOs, I know. Maybe very high level. What's one thing you would be sure to recommend people who are leading SKOs to avoid, and one thing you'd really recommend them to do?
Yeah. So, I would avoid any last minute content building. Because your team will know and they will see it. And so if there's something that feels rushed, don't be afraid to pump the brakes. You are the business manager of the event. And I think it's really important that every session lands. So if something doesn't feel right, or if you feel like something is half baked, don't be afraid to pump the brakes. You will thank yourself for it. But the truth is that everybody will thank you for it too, for speaking up. So don't be afraid. The other thing I will say is that when you're putting together the agenda, and this is something that we did that I think is really paying dividends as we're running up to our event here in a couple of weeks, I sat with our sales leadership team and we went through the agenda session by session, and I got really clear feedback from them on where to focus and where not to focus. And make that session small, make it intimate, make it a safe space for feedback, because ultimately, delivering on what the sales leadership team wants, your go-to-market team wants, is really going to help that content land. So transparency, communication, but also just, manage the agenda like you're managing a team or a business.
Wait, follow-up question. I know I said that was the last question. How far in advance did you start working on the agenda?
Probably about a month and a half or so. And I think that is a function of how many people are attending and how many departments are attending. So for us, it's a go-to-market kickoff. A lot of people need to have eyes and ears on the theme and the sessions and what's being taught. So if it's a more of a intimate sales kickoff, you could probably start a month in advance or so, I'd say.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Melody, this is great. I appreciate you joining us today. I appreciate all the insight into your own process and planning and sharing that. I would encourage, as people are thinking about their SKO and maybe managing commission is a part of what you're thinking about presenting to your team, check out Spiff. We're big fans here at The Juice. Awesome brand, awesome software. So I'd encourage that. Melody, I will let you off stage and then bring you back up for Q&A. But thanks again for your time, and we'll chat soon. With that, I'll invite Julia onto stage here from the Guru team. I'm excited for our audience to meet Julia today.
Hey, Jonathan.
Hello, welcome to the virtual stage here.
Here I am, excited
Ta-da.
to be here. Thanks so much. And loved your first part of your conversation with Melody. I already learned a lot.
Yes, you and me both. Well, cool. I'll tee it off the same way we did with Melody, or maybe I should say kick it off as it is Super Bowl season. But you want to just give us an overview of your role and Guru?
Yeah, so I'm Julia Safa, and I am the internal communications manager here at Guru. Guru is kind of like your company wiki that works in your workflow, so you can have the trusted information you need to do your best work. So our goal is to give every team in the world trusted information so they can do their best work. And this kind of flows nicely into preparing for a sales kickoff and a company kickoff. So I'm kind of an atypical role, right, in the fact that I have internal communications in my title, but at Guru, and for me, it actually fits pretty nicely because I think about my role as kind of the intersection of improving operational efficiency and the employee experience. So that comes together in three ways for me. One is developing what I call digital by default communication best practices. So our team is almost 70% remote, right? And how we communicate digitally is our sort of workplace for the most part. The second thing is establishing a feedback loop for those best practices guardrails so that everyone kind of knows the information they need to know to do their jobs. And the third point, and Melanie kind of touched on this in terms of like creating cadence, is really like working on these all company events like SKO, or we call it CKO, company kickoff, which is to help like create a signal through the noise. So if somebody is preparing to show up for the kickoff, that they know where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to do, and that all of this sort of like efficiency and clarity can allow them to be present at the event and have that sort of cadence afterwards so that that learning can continue and it's not like a one and done, like Melanie spoke to. There's no real surprises unless they're delightful at your kickoff.
I like that. Only good surprises, only the best kind.
So we call it surprise and delight.
Yep, surprise and delight. I love that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this maybe briefly, but maybe a subtle nuance here. Do you want to explain what Guru's SKO looks like? And it sounds like it might be all employees and not just sales.
Yeah, so we've evolved from, or grown, I should say, from doing a revenue or go-to-market specific kickoff to a company kickoff. We call it CKO. We're about 140 employees, so that's maybe more possible at our stage and size. And so, yeah, this year our company kickoff starts on February 13th, and we have people coming in on Monday and leaving on Friday. And that is going to be in Philadelphia, which is where our HQ is. I mentioned this already, but the Super Bowl is the night before everyone's supposed to come in, and we're in the center of the city. So talk about having to pivot. We'll see what happens there. But kind of the shape of the week is that we have travel days and sort of ancillary team events at on the ends of the week. And then in the morning, every morning we have cross-functional content, starting with our team town hall. And then every afternoon we have sort of value-based sessions. So we have something called Give First, where we partner with local organizations, institutions. And we also have Choose Your Own Adventure, where people are going on food tours or workout classes of the city. And so it's like kind of content in the morning, fun and team bonding in the afternoon.
And maybe a Super Bowl parade weaved in between it all.
And maybe, depending on what day, a Super Bowl parade watch party kind of deal. But, the goals of our kickoff are twofold. One is, and most importantly, since we're bringing everyone into one spot, is really to have that cross-functional team connection, because like a lot of our brethren companies, like we're mostly remote, we don't get to see each other. And the other one is to understand how your work as an employee rolls up to company goals. That's the more like content focused one.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, we're big fans of Guru. Both, I'm a user of the software across several different either communities or companies. And a big fan, I'd say also Guru, just your culture. At least from the outside looking in, I think Guru is a culture in the tech space that is admired. And I'd imagine in your role, that's a big part of your role, is make sure that culture lives it out through internal comms and beyond. So you mentioned this a little bit with the gives back and then infusing fun into SKO. How do you make sure that fun and that culture lives through the event, but also the content of the event? How do you balance those two?
Yeah. So I am on the comms team, and I actually partner with a group called the Workplace Strategy Team. And if you think about that going digital, it's like we have offices, but now they're thinking about like the experience, the employee experience of the workplace. So for our kickoff specifically, every single session that we do, whether it's content or Give First or, have a bowling event, we're also big music people at Guru. We have a playlist that a Spotify playlist that we're sourcing before the event so that we can have that playing during sessions, just so creating something like that. But for all of our touch points, they're associated with one of our core values. So for example, our leadership team is doing a kind of like wrap up. How are we going to execute on all the stuff that we shared this week session? And in that's really one of our values is embrace the journey. And so they will the content will be tied specifically back to that value. And we will do that for all of our sessions. We have a session where a customer is going to take their time and speak with us. And so that's tied to the value of creating advocates, because I'm an advocate, our customers are advocates. You using the product, Jonathan, love to see you as an advocate. So everything is kind of on a spreadsheet, in fact, tied back to one of our core values.
That's really inspirational. I love that. Certainly, I feel like that lesson even extends beyond just the SKO. And I know it's a CKO for you all, but I think it's important to be as explicit as in a spreadsheet, tie it to the core value. That's really neat.
Yeah.
I'm a lover of spreadsheets, so that speaks to my heart.
Yes. Oh, if it's not on the spreadsheet, it doesn't exist in my mind. The other thing I'd add there that speaks to Guru's culture and just like the tactical way that we've done some of the sort of value and recognition for employees, because as you and Melanie spoke about, there's an adrenaline rush that we want to cultivate, and an emotional and motivational charge we want to bring into the kickoff, is that we have we have these core values, right? And then every town hall that we do, and we do them on a monthly basis, the kickoff town hall is the big one of the year. We do something called Values in Action, where we recognize employees or cross-functional teams, groups of employees, for demonstrating our values and we actually have a way that we describe the behavior. So like, it's not just, hey, you blah, blah, blah created advocates. It's like they created advocates because they went above and beyond making this connection with our customer and partner, like very specific kind of behaviors attached to the values. And so those are also crowdsourced. So people can react in Slack and send them to a channel, send whatever recognition they're doing for their peers to a channel. And then that is like this collective sort of decision making on how we recognize our employees and infuse that into the week.
That's so tactical. Like I love the tactical execution of the core values that I think a lot of companies, ourselves included, are guilty of talking about or speaking to, but the actual tactical application there is awesome. So I'm curious, Guru, knowledge sharing, wiki, information sharing, you mentioned that at the top. How does Guru ensure that the knowledge shared and presented at your CKO has that lasting impact and doesn't have an expiration date of the week of the CKO?
Yeah. So from a tactical perspective, I will send my favorite card to send to our employees as a know before you go, which is reviewing our company plan, all of the logistical information about the week, information on getting to know our customers. And that's like, whether we're before the event, during the event, after the event, we have a culture of documentation. So if something is helpful to you as an employee that you think would be helpful to somebody else to do their jobs, our rule of thumb is like document that. So all of the content that we share pre, during, and post is documented and easily updated by the subject matter experts. So for example, our CEO will update our company plan in Guru and we'll share that out. But if he needs to make an amendment to that or change that, he can easily just do that via Guru's sort of, documentation engine, and our employees will be able to see those updates in real time. So it's not like they're going to have to go back and look at the deck or the thing that was shared from February when we're in June. They just go to the artifact, which is, owned by the CEO and kept up to date by him.
Love that. Very cool. Makes sense. You all have a plan there, given your company and product and what you do. So that's really great.
Yeah. And it's about like a living and breathing documentation too, right? It's like, this is not going to be a static thing, and we want to incorporate feedback and learnings and all those loops. So, it works really well for us.
That's awesome. Well, I said this was the last question for Melody, and then I actually ended up asking her another question after that. So I'll plan on this being the last question for you before I bring Melody back up on stage. But what's one thing you would be sure to recommend sales enablement leaders do in preparation for their SKO, and maybe one thing to avoid as they get prepared?
So, okay, this is an after the fact answer, but something that I haven't done yet that I plan on doing is not only, of course, having an event survey for all of the attendees of the event, but having an event survey for, say, the leadership team who all have speaking roles at the event, to understand next time how, like, me as a SKO leader, CKO leader can support them awesome. to evolve that. And so that might be hard to hear, but it's like, hey, how was the communication and planning of the event? We happen to I have a weekly optional stand-up that all the leaders are invited to, and it's very explicit when I need them to attend, but a lot of them attend even though it's optional, because I think this space has been given for them to do that. So I think the thing to do is get feedback on your sort of project management execution, because it brings leaders into the process for next year and makes you a strategic partner versus just, dare I say, an event planner, right? Because we know that this is actually a strategic initiative to drive up numbers, drive motivation, whatever your metrics are. But like, to have that thought partnership is really important. Something to avoid is inflexibility. The Eagles win the Super Bowl. All of my sessions are thrown up in the air and tossed around. So you it's more planning on the part of the DRI, or the directory responsible individual, on a SKO or CKO, but like have played out flexible plans. The inflexibility, avoid being hard and fast on some of that stuff, because it'll be emotionally trying, I'm sure.
Yes, that's awesome.
And has I love the
I love the recommendation around the surveys, but stakeholder specific. I think that's sneaky powerful. That's really good. Well, cool. I'm gonna pause, Julia, your my conversation there. I'm gonna invite Melody back up on stage, and we'll do some Q&A here. I saw a few questions come through. I've got a few of my own, and then we'll probably give everybody a little bit of time back here. Melody, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope backstage wasn't too lonely while you were back there.
The perks of being an enablement is I know how to keep myself occupied and enable myself.
That's good. I bet. Awesome. Well, we've had a few questions come through, a few other maybe questions for each of you. And I'm going to lead the way with maybe an obvious one here, but we can maybe check the box and then move on from there. Macroeconomic environment, budgets, budget sensitivity in all businesses right now, I would say. So maybe a two-part question for each of you. Melody, I'll let you answer it first, but I would say broadly, one, how has the economy impacted budget for the SKO? And then two, do you have any tips or tricks for leaders who are more tightly managing an SKO budget than they have in the past?
Yeah, sure. So I think the economy has definitely impacted how we're spending on sales kickoff. I think from a budget perspective, if you're looking at it from a cost per person, the economy plays into it, but I also think that I would probably engage with the hotel or whatever vendor you're using quickly, because prices have gone up quite significantly. And so not only from an economic perspective, but also you want to just make sure that you're on top of some of those costs, post inflation, however you want to frame that. But costs have gone up. So, from a dollar value per person, it's pretty standard. I think, things remain the same, but I think just you need to make sure to do your homework. Things are just generally more expensive right now. The other thing I will say is that, negotiate like crazy. And so, I'm having some like really, nice hotels come in under, some of the bigger chains. And so, really just ensure that you're looking at every line item, asking for discounts, being clear on what your budget is to whomever partner you're working with, because I have found that hotels have been very accommodating. And then lastly, I think from a spend perspective, I'm watching every dollar. I mean, maybe certain things I would have spent in the past, I'm no longer doing. We're just keeping it very professional, very high level. Some of the trinkets and the odds and ends that you normally see at sales kickoff, I think we're ready to say goodbye to from a cost perspective. So I hope that answers your question, a couple of different angles, and hopefully the audience can take something away from that.
Yeah. Julia, Melody, thank you. Julia, I'll pass it to you on just kind of, is the economy impacting the budget, and then any recommendations for people more tightly managing budget this year?
Yeah. So I think at Guru we're always thinking about how to be more operationally efficient with our budgets, and certainly today's climate puts a squeeze on that. I feel like kind of the rule of thumb in the thought process versus tactic for me is like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like, are we focused on the right things? Yeah, the juice, no pun intended. Is it worth the squeeze?
Good job.
And then is there a leadership alignment on you might think that, hey, it's really important that we all, have the newest Yeti branded cooler because that is really going to surprise and delight employees, but you never ask the leaders and you never ask the employees. So for us, on the sort of like tactical budget constraints, we are using our beautiful office as part of our venue. And so like doing more, it's like we have beautiful space. We have people who keep this space and make it interesting. We have a library. Like, why not lean into something? Because when we did ask our employees, not only did they say like, hey, yeah, we want to help, be operationally efficient and make sure we're using the resources we already have. But guess what? We don't want a box coming to our house with a bunch of tchotchkes and swag. We actually don't need that. We would rather have experiences. And like people would rather do the give first cradles to crayon opportunity that we're doing than have the new t-shirt. And so I guess the point there is like, ask employees. And then in terms of content, like our content is actually focusing on the economy, because we're thinking about how can we help our customers weather this, and like weaving that into the conversation. I'm sure as part of like, I don't know if it's true for Melody too. It's like, how do you ask for a change in compensation when there was just a big layoff at your company? And like, that's a tricky emotional thing to navigate. So just being realistic about that with content and meeting employees where they are.
I love the employees wanting to take ownership of, we want to help with the operational efficiency. I think that's really cool. And then I also love to just ask. It's as simple as that sometimes, right? Really smart there. So cool. I saw a question come in through Q&A. Misha, thank you for that. And a little bit of a selfish question I was going to ask as well. Maybe Melody, I'll kick this over to you, knowing that your event is primarily sales. And I think you said broader go-to-market. Marketing, sales and marketing working together, some of the, I think, healthy tension that there is sometimes between sales and marketing. How do you involve, what is marketing's role at an SKO? And how do you ensure that there's alignment coming out of the event between the two?
Yeah, for sure. I think go-to-market alignment across sales, marketing. I would also say, given the focus and dialogue, even around retention these days, I would also ensure your customer success team is kind of plugged into that conversation. It's everything. And so, you really want to ensure that every keynote touches on, how your content is going to support your broader team, but also, pulling your marketing team into every conversation, even if it's demo training or account profiling, or, oftentimes your product marketing team is running the competitive session. It's just, I would just consider everybody rallying around how they contribute to the sales process, and then, back out your content from there. So everybody is involved, everybody is aligned. And then also, while you're building your agenda, I would also encourage you to think about what are the gives during and after the event. And that's a really great alignment strategy, because maybe, if you're going to do a session around, let's say, deal desk, and this is a session of ours, so this rings true. So, we're doing a session around, getting comfortable with deal desk, negotiating, what are the gives and the gets. And then, pulling in your product marketing team to think about how we can upgrade our proposal deck. So think about the sales process, and you think about what needs to get done, aligning those gives during and after the session and bringing in those stakeholders, I think is just a really great way to have some tangible alignment, aside from just being in, the room together, right?
Yeah. That's really good. Former product marketer myself, I love the idea of updating proposal templates. So music to my ears there. All right, Julia, maybe one for you. Yeah. You mentioned you both are returning to in-person SKO this year. I guess I would suspect there's probably still some element of hybrid involved in those events, given I'm sure there's just people who can or cannot attend in person. But maybe for those that are still managing either hybrid or fully virtual SKOs, your experience with those, any recommendations around virtual SKO participation?
Yeah, so I've done it all, like fully virtual, on-site, and virtual, and then this year is fully in person, and we're not actually giving a virtual component, which is like a hot take, which I can talk about more later. But for like the virtual kickoff in itself, I think like the expectation setting around like the pre-work and what people are supposed, like the expectation setting for the week is really critical, because you can just be on Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever you're doing if you're supposed to be in this like virtual kickoff. Like what differentiates the kickoff between just your normal workday that you have to be on sessions? No session should be over an hour, like full stop in the virtual thing. And having a variety, I put a blog to Misha's question in the chat where I kind of like went through planning a virtual kickoff. We had like a very, I don't know if folks work with their brand teams at all on virtual kickoff, but we really tried to bring in this element of like surprise and delight. And we had like a theme throughout, and even like kind of virtual games on Slack. One year we did a beach blanket bingo that essentially in like our mid-year kickoff had folks, you know, we had swag, but we had folks kind of going outside of the office or outside of their home office, engaging, taking pictures of them blowing bubbles, and like bringing back and posting it online. And people absolutely like love that, like a lot of laughs. And I never, like, I kind of roll my eyes because I'm like, nobody wants to sit on the virtual kickoff. But it was really fun, and happy to talk to anyone. That blog kind of captures it, but happy to talk to anyone about like how that was executed and the feedback we got. It does depend on like a time zone thing, right? If you're a global company, it's a very different effort than if you can have folks in one synchronous session, but that's a different webinar.
Yes, that's a big topic. All right, Melody, one for you. You're in San Diego with the SPIF team, and I know you've mentioned some of the events going on around the actual SKO event itself. How do you balance ensuring that you're encouraging fun and team building and bonding and relaxation with some of the productivity that needs to come? How do you find yourself trying to strike the right balance between, you know, just raw, pure productivity and some of the fun elements of SKO?
Yeah. Oh, what a great question. So I think when you're looking at your agenda and you're putting together the curriculum, one, I would ensure that you've got plenty of breaks throughout the day so people feel like they can get work done, so they're mentally there with you. I think that's the first thing that you really need to be mindful of. I have made the mistake of doing long day meetings without a break. And obviously, like I think that amplifies the stress. You kind of lose folks. And so making sure that there is a comfortable flow where people have breaks. Maybe you're encouraging, some work time with, designated space. So that way you're leaning into what you know your audience wants. I think balancing fun and productivity. Look, I think with any sales kickoff, you want to keep people moving. You want to keep people engaged. I agree with Julia's sentiment, like nothing over an hour. But you can easily turn like a keynote presentation into a 30-minute and then a team activity like around the hotel for maybe your roadmap or some sort. So I think like learning, engagement, and also productivity are kind of synonymous when it comes to sales kickoff. So you really just have to determine, what is the goal of the presentation. And if you feel like, there is an area for creativity where your team needs to lean in on, I would encourage you to then maybe step away from the presentation and do something a little bit more creative. I have an example of this, if that's cool. So at a sales kickoff in the past, we had a fairly new management team. We had just restructured and we had some new leaders, and we really wanted to encourage a culture of coaching, a culture of feedback. And so for our sales process session, I could have easily done a keynote on that. I could have easily put together some slides, done a handout and saying, hey, everybody, like, here's our new process, right? But what I did instead was to achieve the goal of fun and productivity, I actually did a life-size game around the location. And there were game pieces, and you only had to, you can only move on if you had this coaching conversation, or you can only move on if you answered the sales process question correctly. So
your exit criteria.
Yeah, your exit criteria, you got to read the room a little bit. So if you know that there is a certain kind of area of sensitivity in your agenda, I think that's when you have to dial up the productivity and dial up the fun, but then also, lean into the, areas that your audience wants, like breaks. Encourage cell phone charging, whatever works for you. But just think about it that way. Just keep people moving is my advice.
Yeah, I think that's key. And I love that you mentioned like you actually give people time to do their work during the day. I think so many times people are like, this is our SKO or this is our CKO, this is our big event. Like you should only be present here 100% of the time. And I actually like that you specifically call out like, no, they need to reply to some email, probably play a little bit of catch up, check up on things at home. I just think that's such a good reminder.
Yeah, we're human, so
it feels realistic, right? That's like a realistic expectation. It's like you don't want people to get in trouble, so may as well get in trouble, quote unquote, but so give them that space outside of that. I also love what you said, sorry to just jump in here, Jonathan, but Melody, about the sort of like using the space, doing it like creating a game, because I feel like so many sessions can be what I call like talk at, right? And that's actually, that happens when you didn't prepare, right? If you don't have the goal of the content ready, like at a certain number of weeks ahead of the kickoff, it's harder to have that creative play if you're like scrambling to get the content in. But if you know what the goal is and you have it, then you have a little more wiggle room to do the more creative stuff.
Yeah, I would not suggest testing the game in your parents' living room. So I just
from personal experience.
Yeah, from personal experience. But otherwise than that, I agree with everything you said, Julia. You'll be all right. You just, it really is a read the room. Like if you suspect there's certain things that might, not land or might feel uncomfortable because you need other dependencies and skill sets, then yeah, for sure. But yeah, don't test it at your parents'.
There's a story there. Maybe that's a separate webinar as well. I think it kind of goes full circle about what you were both saying around kind of having your content prepared ahead of time. To me, it sounds like you almost need to have the content, figure out what your goals are, and then you can figure out, okay, which of these things can be turned into a game or turned into something interactive or turned into culture building, or but you really need to have that foundational layer of content done to understand where you can and cannot insert those things. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate the two of you joining the Juice. We've got our Q1 kickoff tomorrow and Thursday, and I now have some work to do based on some of the advice that we've gotten here today, because I'm realizing now some self-awareness that I've got some opportunities to improve. I hope all of our audience, I'm sure you all have some actionable takeaways from this. Again, this has been recorded. It'll be shared post-event. We'll also share some of the highlights from the event and some written content post-event. But again, Julia, Melody, thank you for joining us. Goldcast, thank you for hosting us on the platform. If anybody has any questions, we shared both Julia and Melody's information at the top of the deck. I'm sure you all would be happy to help. And same thing here with the Juice. We're always happy to help or help connect you with people inside of our network. But thank you, everyone, for joining today, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.